Story time about how I got fired because I told my boss that I loved him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time instead of me on Instagram. Around 2 months ago, I started a new job. It was a CrossFit gym and all I had to do was check people in before class started. One of the female owners of the gym ended up hiring me, but I didn't realize that she had a husband. Let me tell you, when this man came to the gym, I nearly fell off my seat. Not only is he the owner of the gym, but he's also a model. Like a legit published model. Then I found out that he was married to the woman that hired me. Being the bad bitch that I am, I knew that that was not gonna stop me. I have a not so little confession. I have dated about 3 married men in my past. I know it sounds like a lot, but married men are the best. They give you money, they take you out, and they keep it a secret. So there's just like no hassle when you date a married guy. So I came up with a plan. It was pretty much just to flirt with him, and let me tell you, he gave it right back to me. Girl, I am just as shocked as you are. I thought it was gonna be harder to get him to warm up, but nope. Slowly I realized that he started scheduling me on the days that he was there by himself. He was just giving me the vibe, like, you know the vibe. So I started waking up extra early to do my hair and my makeup and look absolutely fabulous when I got to work. Not only that, but I also started bringing him in food. I knew he loved protein smoothies, so I was taking him a protein smoothie almost every single day. And I would just happen to bring extra lunch with me, and I would offer it to him, and he loved it. This was the perfect excuse for us to sit down together and have lunch every single day. And then we got into him complaining about his dear wife. Now let me be honest, I didn't know where things were gonna go with him, but I definitely wasn't expecting him to start complaining about his wife so soon. This is characteristic of a man that wants to cheat. A little backstory on the wife: she is a ball buster. She also kind of has a short temper, which kind of scares me. By the end of my second week there, I knew I had him in my pocket. But then he had to go away for a shoot, which meant that I wasn't gonna see him for 2 weeks. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I got fired for telling my boss that I loved him. Part 2. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. That's when he went away for 2 weeks on a business trip, and I was so sad. And that's when I realized I was in love with him. Like, truly, madly, and deeply. And I only knew that because I wasn't flirting with anybody else. I was only thinking about him and waiting for him to come back. So during those 2 weeks, I took advantage and I started going to the gym every single day. I mean, I worked there, so I started working out like crazy. He happened to mention that he loves girls with abs. So I basically went on a 500-calorie deficit, and I was pretty skinny by the time he got back. I would not recommend this to anybody because it's absolutely treacherous. I love food, and I was always in a bad mood until he came back. The next time he saw me at the gym, I looked phenomenal. He walked up to me and said, "Oh my God, I missed you so much, and you look fucking amazing." I melted into a puddle. The following day, he and I both opened the gym together, and of course, I brought him his favorite smoothie, and he asked me if we could catch up. That's when he asked me if I had been dating anybody while he'd been gone. The fact that this man was already jealous after not seeing me for 2 weeks let me know that he was vibing me just as much as I was vibing him. So I did the logical thing and I said yes. He looked at me dead in the face and said, "Why are you gonna date somebody when you have me?" I was so shook, I actually didn't know what to say, and he laughed. Then he said, "Oh, you know, I'm just joking. I'm just messing with you." And I said, "No, you're not. You actually meant that, didn't you?" That's when we just both stared at each other without saying a single word. I actually thought he was gonna kiss me, but he didn't. Then he confessed that he was so attracted to me that he didn't know if I should stay working there. I told him that we could just simply stay away from each other so that I wouldn't have to quit. He said that that's not gonna work for him because he actually wanted to see me and talk to me all the time. After that, I could tell that he was mustering up the courage to kiss me or to do something, but he was scared. Go to part 3. Story time about I confessed to my boss that I loved him and he fired me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent him on Instagram. After he confessed his feelings for me, I could tell that he was just trying to be close to me like all the time. He would find any excuse to touch my arm or my shoulder or my neck or my hair. And I was super flattered. By the way, I'm already in love with him at this point. All I was waiting for was for him to actually kiss me or to make the first move. Then I noticed some weird stuff happening between him and his wife. Do you remember that they both own the gym that I work at? Well, she started coming to the gym in the mornings when he was supposed to be there. So every time I would bring an extra protein smoothie and an extra lunch for him, I would have to hide it from her. That's when one day he asked me if we could meet up at an undisclosed location. It was pretty much just an empty parking lot, and I went into his car and then we talked. He confessed to me that he was having an affair with somebody else from the gym, and that this person was starting to go a little bit crazy because she saw him and I flirting. He told me that this woman was crazy and that she might even tell his wife about us. So basically he wanted me to not flirt with him anymore and that maybe we could see each other outside of work. But that even that would be too dangerous just in case she was following him. I asked him to tell me who it was and he gave me a hint. He said, "She's the really loud one." Immediately, I knew who he was talking about. It was one of the current gym members who comes to every single class with her husband. I could not make this stuff up. Then he basically told me straight out I needed to not speak to him at all at the gym, and that if this woman ever came up to me and asked me anything, I needed to just play dumb. To be honest, I actually got scared at this point because he told me that she was dangerous and crazy. So we both both actually started acting like we didn't know each other. But the thing was, he wasn't trying to see me outside of work. He always kept saying that he was too busy or that his wife couldn't find out. So I wasn't talking to him at work at all. And again, this just solidified the fact that I was totally in love with this man. And then I found myself extremely jealous at the thought of him having an affair with this other woman. Not just that, but one day I walk into the office and he's full on making out with his wife on their desk. I felt totally betrayed and lied to. This whole time he's talking about how much he hated his wife, but then he's making out with her. And the woman that he was having an affair with was coming to the gym all the time and always grabbing on him and pulling him. I was jealous and envious all the time. It actually got to the point where I couldn't do my job because I was always aware of where he was and who he was talking to. Finally, we both show up to open the gym one day and we have some privacy. That's when I told him that I was really jealous and that all I wanted to do was be with him. And then the words just came out of my mouth. I said, I love you. He looked horrified. He looked confused and angry. Then all he said was, I have to fire you. Then he said that he couldn't have me around because I was too much of a risk. I literally begged him not to fire me, but he said no. I even tried to take it back. The next day he gave me a $3,000 check and told me never to come back. I drive by the gym every single day just to check up on him, and I'm still totally obsessed. My friends actually think I'm going crazy, but I'm just in love. Should I just forget about him or do I have hope? My girlfriend left me on my birthday to go be with her guy best friend. I, female 22, and my girlfriend 22. We both came out at the same time, and we were actually best friends before we came out. The reason why we both became best friends was because we both knew we were gay, but we didn't really tell anybody, but we knew each other was gay, if you know what I mean. We've been together for 6 months, and everything has been actually pretty good, with the exception of her guy best friend moving back to the city. When I met this guy, I knew right away that he has feelings for my girlfriend, especially when he gets drunk. He gets super handsy with her. Obviously, I told my girlfriend that I didn't like him around her at all, but she put her foot down and told me that I had no say in it because he was her best friend. I basically didn't bring it up again, but they would hang out all the time, and they were always together by themselves. They never invited me to go along with them. My birthday was coming up, and her and I had already booked a little cabin in the woods. We were very excited about this, but then she slowly started to ask me if I wouldn't mind if her best friend joined us, and I told her I didn't want him to be there. It was my birthday, and I was paying for the cabin. You see, my girlfriend's really broke, so I basically pay for everything. Then she threw a tantrum and said that I was being controlling and that I didn't want to let her have fun. Then she picks up the phone and calls her best friend to complain about me in front of me. Part 2 is up. My girlfriend abandoned me on my birthday so she could go hang out with her guy best friend. Part 2. After I told her I did not want her best friend coming to my birthday getaway, she threw a tantrum, called him, and complained about me in front of me to him. I was actually so hurt that I grabbed the phone and hung up. She looked at me and told me that I had no right to take the phone from her and blah, blah, blah. That's when I broke down into tears and asked her point blank, do you have a crush on this guy? Immediately she said no. But then she told me she had a confession. She proceeded to tell me that they both lost each other's V cards to each other, and that's why they were so close. And that because they're trying to work on their relationship, I should let him come to my birthday trip, the one I'm paying for. I asked her if she had feelings for him once again, and she said no. And then I asked her if he has feelings for her. This girl just stayed quiet. Then she had the gall to say, what if he does? Is that really that bad? I actually had to explain to her why that would be a bad situation. Finally, my birthday comes around and she is nowhere to be seen. I was waiting for her in my car to drive to the cabin with her. An hour later, after she's supposed to be there, she sends me a text saying that she's gonna stay with him and that hopefully this distance will make our relationship stronger. Instead, I took my whole family to the cabin and now I'm ignoring her. Now she's been calling me nonstop. I took her not showing up as a breakup, but she wants me back. What should I do? Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm a 27-year-old male. My girlfriend is 33. We started dating 2 years ago. A couple of months in, we started talking about marriage and she sounded really open to it. My dream has always been to get married and have kids. I never thought I would fall in love this hard. I have dated girls before, but I have never put in this much effort. To tell you that I took her to meet my parents 2 weeks after I met her, and even after 2 years, I keep falling in love with her. I'm really close to my parents and I decided to tell them that I wanted to marry her. They told me to go for it. So I planned a very elaborate proposal. I even got her 2 best friends to help me. I hired a photographer, a videographer, and I got the type of ring that I knew she would love from Tiffany's. The day of the proposal, everything went perfect. She showed up looking absolutely beautiful, her friends were hiding behind a bush, and the photographer and the videographer got everything just at the right time. But guess what the problem was? She said no. She told me that she definitely didn't think we were ready for marriage or even to be engaged. This is a fundamental flaw. I don't agree with her. So 2 weeks later, I proposed again. And guess what she said? Part 2 is up. Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate, I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a third time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? Story time about how I asked my girlfriend to marry me 3 times and she said no. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. So after she said no the first time, I decided to ask a second time. And this time she told me that she just wasn't convinced that I was the guy she wanted to marry. As you can imagine, this broke my heart. And I gotta tell you, I'm not a bad looking guy. I get hit on regularly by women. And all of the girlfriends I've had in my life that are just friends have told me that they would want to be in a relationship with a guy like me. I'm caring, kind, considerate. I'm funny. So for my girlfriend of 2 years to tell me that she wasn't convinced I was the guy for her broke me to my core. I even started questioning my manliness. Would I be a good provider? Would I be a good father? Do I even deserve these things? My girlfriend has been the only girl that has never chased me. I'm always the one getting chased by girls, and truthfully, it bores me. So maybe the fact that she's not chasing me is what keeps me interested in her, which I know is so messed up, because maybe if she did say yes to marrying me, would I get bored of her? I asked her to marry me a third time, and she said no again. My friends and family think I should break up with her, but I love her too much. I can't get enough of this girl. I want her to marry me. What should I do? My boyfriend confessed that he thinks I'm ugly. Here's the long requested update. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. After he told me that he would not marry me because he didn't consider me as pretty as I should be, I started asking him what he would change about me. Can you believe he sat down on his phone and made a list? An actual damn list. First on his list was, I was too heavy. He told me I needed to lose at least 20 pounds. I figured that shouldn't be too hard, so I got on a diet. Then he told me he preferred my natural hair color, which is brown. So I stopped dyeing my hair blonde and went completely brown. Oh yes, and his last request was that I get lip filler. He said that my thin lips have always bothered him. Then he told me I should look at more makeup tutorials to figure out how to do my makeup. Then he told me that I should tan in the sun to get some nice color on me. I know you guys want me to break up with him. What if I make all these changes and I'm actually healthier and happier? Not just for him, but for me. Since I last spoke to you guys, it's been about 2 weeks. I've only lost 2 pounds, but I'm on my way. I ended up getting lip filler and I love it. My lips look pretty but not exaggerated, so it actually looks nice. I also got Botox and cheek filler even though he did not request this. And to be honest, my face looks a lot better. It actually does like my new hair though. And I started sitting out in the sun, although I will start fake tanning because I do not want to get wrinkles. Mostly because self-care sister told me not to, and I trust this girl. Since making all these changes, he's actually been a little bit nicer to me. In exchange for me making all these changes, he's spending more time with me and going out less with his friends. He's even taking me out on dates twice a week. Before I started making all these changes, I was always trying to look like something I wasn't. I was obsessed with being blonde and contouring, and he basically begged me not to contour anymore. So I asked Esther to do a tutorial for me, which she said she's gonna post. I feel like all he really wants me to do is focus on my self-care, and I'm totally willing to do that. I'll have to keep you guys updated, but so far so good. I did get myself a trainer, and he actually got jealous, which I think is a good sign, right? Self-care sister out. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. dress. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. That's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle.
Story time about I caught my dad doing it with my neighbor. That's when my neighbor asked my dad for his number. I turned to her and I said, he's married to my mother, you know. And then I pushed my dad into the elevator. I instantly started to cry. I was embarrassed and mortified. How can I have a father like that? I told him he was never to come to my building again and that he flirted with her first. He was twice her age. Disgusting. He told me that I was overreacting and that the only person that made it weird and gross was me. Luckily, it did not take us long to move in all my boxes, but then he kept looking for excuses to stay. I asked him to leave 3 times. And all of a sudden, the girl walks out of the apartment that was right in front of me, meaning she's my neighbor. My dad started talking to her again. That's when I closed my apartment door and locked him out. Could hear them talking for a few minutes, so I put on my music and started unpacking. And then I called my mom immediately to tell her, and I begged her to come live with me. Then she told me that she got into a really big fight with my dad about it. I was so angry I opened my door and just left. I see my dad and her still talking in the hallway. I didn't say anything and I left. Went to pick up my mom and I took her out for lunch. My mom and I decided to go back to my apartment to unpack. I walked up to my apartment first, and as soon as I opened the door, that's when I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. My lying, cheating father helped me move into my new apartment. I have to be honest and say my dad is narcissistic. He's always been selfish, thinks he's always right. There's just no way to reason with him when he's wrong. My sister and I are very tight with my mom. We will always side with her. By the way, my parents are still married. They've been together for 37 years. My sister's 30 and I'm 22. I recently landed my dream job, and this meant that I needed to find an apartment closer to my job. So I moved about half an hour away from my parents. My dad travels for work a lot, which is the best. It means he's not home a lot. So I told my mom that she should move into my apartment with me. She said that she would think about it. My move-in day finally arrived. My mom and my sister had helped me pack and organize everything. My dad didn't lift a finger, so I asked him to help me move all the boxes into my apartment. He said yes. The moment we get into my apartment, he sees a really pretty girl, and he just starts talking to her like I'm not even there. For some reason, this girl starts flirting back. I was appalled and disgusted. She then asked my dad for his phone number. What the heck? Part 2 is story time about I caught my dad doing the dirty with my neighbor. As soon as I see my dad's naked butt on top of my neighbor, I just started yelling. I needed them to know that I was in the room. How dare my dad do this in my apartment? I mean, couldn't he go to her apartment? 20 steps behind me was my mom, and as soon as I yell, she runs in. Mind you, my dad is still on top of this girl. When he sees my mom, he jumps up. The girl is completely naked, grabs her clothes, and runs over to her apartment. My dad didn't even bother to cover his dingling. It was the most horrendous thing that had ever happened to me. That's when my mom says, I want a divorce and I'm moving in with her. He didn't say a word. He calmly put his clothes back on and walked out. Didn't give an explanation, didn't apologize, nothing. A true narcissist. When he finally leaves, my mom and I start to cry. We called my sister and she came over. We went back to my parents' house and grabbed all of my mom's stuff. We didn't even have time for boxes, we just grabbed trash bags. My mom and I are living together, but guess what? My dad is now dating my neighbor. He's never apologized to my mom. They did get a divorce, thank God. We have to see him all the time at her apartment. How do I break them up? My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her one bit. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost a year. When I met him, he already had a very big group of best friends. One of them was this girl. There's actually another girl in the group, but my boyfriend and this particular girl, let's call her Lacey. Lacey is completely obsessed with my boyfriend. I tell him all the time, but he doesn't want to listen to me. She goes out of her way to spend time with him, and she'll do girlfriend things for him. Sometimes she'll call him and say, I cooked us dinner, come over to my apartment. She even goes to his apartment and helps him do laundry. Let me go back. back though. When we started dating, he asked me not to be uncomfortable and that him and her were only good friends. But as soon as I saw them with each other, it was visible that she was in love with him. When he first brought me around to meet his friends, she was super territorial. She would sit next to him and even sat on his lap in front of me. And this made my boyfriend uncomfortable. He asked her to sit on a chair instead of his lap. After that, I asked him if he had feelings for her and he said no. He said he's only ever seen her as a sister, that the thought of hooking up with her makes him want to vomit. Lacey reached out to me and asked me to have lunch with her. Throughout the whole lunch, all she talked about was my boyfriend, and how amazing he is, and how only a good girl deserves him. Part 2 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I don't trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. And her and I went to lunch. All she talked about was my boyfriend. That's when she started saying things like, he only deserves a really good girl. That's when I was straight up with her. I told her that he had already chosen me because he loved me. And that I didn't need her to tell me what my boyfriend needed. You guys should have seen the look on this girl's face. She was shocked that I would defend myself and even talk back to her. Then she said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I told her that I didn't feel bad and that I knew what she was doing. She was basically trying to intimidate me and make me feel that I wasn't good enough for my boyfriend. She denied it and started apologizing, but at least I made it clear to her that I was not stupid and that she was not gonna walk all over me like she probably did with all of his exes. By the way, one of his past girlfriends actually broke up with her because of this girl. I mean, Lacey. Found this out through one of the other friends. They told me that I needed to be careful with her. That's why I was prepared to go to lunch with her. Guess what happened though? I called my boyfriend to say hi to him and that's when he starts yelling at me. He said Lacey called him to tell him that I had attacked her at lunch, that I basically threatened her. I explained to him what happened from my point of view, and he said that she was probably just overreacting. But it was her word against mine. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend is moving in with his girl best friend and I do not trust her. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. After Lacey told my boyfriend that I had attacked her and threatened her, he told me to keep my distance. So I did. But that meant that he would hang out with her without me. I found this completely unacceptable. That's when I told my boyfriend that she was manipulative, that she had clearly planned everything out so that he and her could be alone. Then I told him that his ex-girlfriend left him because of her. He told me that I didn't know the full story and that I should mind my own business. That's when I noticed that he wouldn't come over to my apartment every day. And guess why? His best friend Lacey told him that she had a stalker and that she needed my boyfriend to stay over her house so that she could feel protected and safe. I just can't. I told him that she was clearly manipulating him and probably lying about the stalker situation so that he could spend more time with her. And just like that, 2 days later, he told me that they were moving in together and that she miraculously found an apartment big enough for the two of them. In 2 days? I don't think so. I think she had been planning this the whole time. And my boyfriend is just stupid enough to fall for it. I told him if he moved in with her that he should just forget about me. He begged me not to leave him, so I guess I'm still his girlfriend. He's still debating whether or not to move in with her. He says he doesn't want to lose me, but he wants to be able to be there for her. I think I should break up with him, but maybe there's another solution. What do you guys think I should do? Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers is not my story time and send me on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Part 2 is story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was gonna go out with his friends and I was gonna go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's something on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says, "He's cute, but he's not that cute." What? Part 4 is up. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do? My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, is not my story time, send me an Instagram. I know you guys are gonna all say yes immediately, but hear me out. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. My best friend and I actually met him at a bar. That night, I never expected that he would ever come after me. I consider my best friend the prettier of the two of us, so I'm used to her getting hit on instead of me. But that night, my boyfriend came to me. He talked to me pretty much the entire night, and my best friend told me to go for it. So I did. He and I spent the night together, and after that, we were inseparable. To the point where he wanted me to move in with him after 2 months. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy and they didn't want me to move in with him, but I did anyway. I come from a Latino family, so this was absolutely reprehensible. I went against my family's wishes and they actually stopped speaking to me for a little bit, but luckily I got them back. My boyfriend during that time gave me all his support. He told me that my family would come around eventually and that they would see that we were in love. So living together was the logical next step. After 3 months of living together, I knew that I wanted to marry him, and he would talk about marriage all the time. He asked me what kind of ring I would want and what I would want for the proposal. We even started talking about our honeymoon. I was also starting to get in the best shape of my life. I was looking super snatched. My boyfriend told me that he loved the way that I look, but that he didn't want me to get skinny. Again, I just felt like he was supporting me and loving me. Around this time, my best friend started dating somebody. After a few weeks, they got really serious about the relationship. And of course, we went on double dates. After the 3rd double date, I noticed that my boyfriend was getting a little annoyed. I got the feeling he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend. Follow for part 2. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, is not my story time, send me on Instagram. I asked him if he was jealous of my best friend's boyfriend, and that's when he said no. But every time we would go on double dates, he would get in such a bad mood. 3 weeks ago, my best friend told me that she was moving in with her boyfriend. And when I told my boyfriend that they were moving in, his face almost went green. I asked him what was wrong and he said nothing. After that, he went into the bathroom and didn't come out for 40 minutes. Again, I asked him if he was okay and he said yeah. And I sat him down and asked him to be honest with me. That's when he said, "I'm attracted to your best friend." Instantly started to cry because I had already been suspecting it. He explained to me that he didn't have any feelings for her until she got a boyfriend, and that he felt that he had some sort of ownership over her. Before my best friend got a boyfriend, the 3 of us would hang out a lot. And not once then did I ever get a feeling that he was attracted to her. He told me that he would never act on his feelings, but he didn't want to go on any more double dates. I asked him if he wanted to be with her instead of me, and he said absolutely not. He said that I was the love of his life and that attraction only meant attraction, that he didn't have feelings for her. A few days later, he took me to the most expensive restaurant in our city and asked me to marry him. But I didn't know what to say. I can't stop thinking that he's attracted to my best friend. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend confessed to me that he's attracted to my best friend. What should I do? Disclaimer, is not my story time, sending me on Instagram. After he proposed, I told him I didn't know what to say. He told me to think it over. I finally decided to tell my best friend what my boyfriend had told me. That he had confessed that he was attracted to her. First she laughed. I told her no. I'm serious, he confessed that he's attracted to you. That's when she told me I needed to break up with him. That's when I told her that he had also proposed. And she said, well then you really need to break up with him now. That's when she told me that she didn't want me to resent her and that it was completely out of her control. And I didn't. didn't. I promised her that I would never resent her for my boyfriend being attracted to her. It's not like she ever did anything on purpose to make him feel attracted. She also told me that marrying him right now would be rushing into it, and she's kind of right. We've only really known each other for 6 months. Then she told me that she's never gotten the feeling that he's attracted to her. She's never caught him looking at her or anything like that. So now her theory is that he's looking for an easy way out, and that he probably wants me to break up with him. But my boyfriend is still sweet and super affectionate. He's constantly showering me with love. My best friend thinks that if I stay with him, our relationship will suffer. I've known my best friend longer. What should I do? Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Should I leave him? Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's send me on Instagram. I'm so sad about the palette. My fiance and I met a few years ago through friends. When we first met each other, I had a really bad first impression of him. First off, he was completely up himself. All he did was talk about himself and never once asked me questions. We were surrounded by other people, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt when he asked me out. I said yes, but our first date was kind of the same. He only really talked about himself, his career, the things he likes to do, his favorite foods, his family, his dog. I eventually just started volunteering information because he wouldn't really ask me. After our date, I didn't speak to him for a full 2 weeks. I was really turned off by his attitude, but then he messaged me saying that he was really nervous and that he realizes that he probably could have been a little more talkative. I said, yeah, you could have been. I told him how I really felt and he did apologize and he asked me out to dinner again. This time I invited him to my apartment and he made us a full 4-course meal. By the way, he's a chef. Obviously, that night, I completely fell in love with him. He made all of my favorite foods, but the gourmet version. A few months later, we became boyfriend and girlfriend. And there were still a few things that I didn't like about him, though. Like, he never really had anything to talk about other than himself. Exactly a year after we met, he decided to propose, and I said yes. But when I asked him to do things for the wedding, he says no. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my fiance is refusing to help me plan our wedding. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, I said I'm on Instagram. To be honest, when he asked me to marry him, I was totally blindsided. Honestly felt like our relationship was starting to get stale. So when he asked me to marry him, I was like, for real? He told me that I was the first person who ever made him feel important. And looking back, I realized that it's because he only talked about himself and I really let him talk about only himself. Anyway, we immediately said yes out of the excitement, but when I called my mom to tell her, I was actually crying, which is like, okay, maybe I shouldn't marry him then. A few weeks into our engagement, we hadn't talked about planning at all. So I decided to ask him, like, what do you want the wedding to be like? That's when he told me that he didn't really care, but that he would just give me money for it. I mean, on one hand, that makes me really happy because I don't want my parents to have to pay for the wedding, and he has a lot of money. But on the other hand, I want him to be involved, especially for the food because he's a chef. I decided to hire a wedding planner because my job is extremely busy. I work in marketing. Asked him to go to a few meetings with me, he said no. When I finally found the perfect wedding planner, I asked my fiance if we could go have lunch with him, and he said no. This is when I blew up in his face. I asked him why he wasn't participating at all. That's when he told me that he was too busy at the restaurant, that he didn't have time to do anything with the wedding. I was like, okay, fine. When it came time to choosing the caterers, I demanded that he go with me. He told me that he would try to get off work, but he never did. Every time I tried to schedule it, he would say that he was busy with work. That's when I told him that his restaurant, which is super fancy, should just cater the whole wedding. And he said no. He told me they were way too busy and ready to get a Michelin star, so there was absolutely no way they could cater his wedding. That's when he said, you can handle it, I trust you. I went home and cried the entire night. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my fiance refuses to help me plan our wedding. Claimers to know my story time, I sent me on Instagram. After I got home and cried, he came home and asked me what was wrong. That's when I told him that he didn't seem excited about the wedding, and that leaving all the planning to me made me feel like I was his employee, as if I had nothing better to do, which I do have my career just like he has his. Not to mention the fact that me picking everything I want for our wedding makes it feel like it's my wedding and not ours. He told me that I was overreacting. He also said that he was excited for the wedding, but that he was too tired and too busy to even think about it. That's when I told him that I was really busy and I was really tired too. And he begrudgingly told me that he would carve out some time this week so that we could speak to some of the caterers. I told the wedding planner and he started setting up some meetings. But of course, my fiance canceled on the first 2. He did show up to the 3rd one, but all he did was criticize the food. Then we went cake tasting. I expected this to be fun. When my friends have had cake tastings for their wedding, they always have so much fun. As soon as we showed up to the cake shop, he asked me, where did you find this? That's when I told him that our planner had found it. He said it looked like a supermarket bakery. That's when I told him that I don't mind supermarket bakeries and that it was probably just as good as a French bakery. He laughed and said, wow, you're funny, babe. We tasted the cakes and he actually liked them. Thank God. But then he requested to go to more cake tastings. We ended up going to 5 other places. This was already too much for me. I got a new account at work and I'm still trying to lose weight for the wedding. So him making me run around trying to taste cake is like the straw that broke the camel's back. After 2 weeks, we finally decided on a cake flavor. Most people must have fun planning their weddings, right? But I just feel like I'm drowning. I have to make all the important decisions on my own. I decided to involve my mom and sister and they've helped me so much. Of course, the wedding planner is helping me too, but ultimately the decisions have to be made by me. He
hasn't made any effort to help me with anything else. Kinda wanna break up with him, but I feel like this isn't a big enough reason to break up with him. What should I do? My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimer, not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. My husband and I have a really toxic relationship. When he and I first started dating, I was extremely jealous. I would instigate fights almost every single day. Now that we're married, I'm definitely less jealous, but he's always been jealous throughout our relationship. He tries to control everything I do, down to the way I dress and even the people I can or cannot hang out with. He even insisted that I quit my job, which I did. He's invested a lot in Tesla and crypto, so he makes a lot of money without having to leave the house, which yes, is totally amazing, but that means he and I are together all the time. And with his jealousy, sometimes I just can't stand him. I've tried to help him with his jealousy because I used to be in that place. And when I try to talk to him about it, he just gets mad at me. Whenever he sees that I post something on Instagram, he gets angry. He says that I'm looking for attention, which of course I am, but not from guys. Everyone posts on social media because they want to show off their life. A little on my sister. We're identical twins, and we're really, really close. Unfortunately, my sister got laid off from her job last year. That's when she decided to start her OnlyFriends. I support her in everything she wants to do. She's actually making really good money from it, so she's really happy about it. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to look for something. When I see my sister's pictures, part 2 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my story time, is on Instagram. A few days ago, I got on my husband's phone to transfer some money from his account to mine. When I started looking for his banking app, I noticed something else on his screen. I had never seen this before, so I clicked on it. And as soon as I opened it, I see my sister's pictures. And I knew it was her OnlyFriends right away. By the way, I had never told my husband that my sister had an OnlyFriends. She wouldn't even post about it on her social media. So the fact that he found it makes me believe that he had my phone bugged or something. But here's the thing. He was using a different name for his account. So it was likely that my sister did not know it was him. From there, I could see that he was following a bunch of other girls. And when I went to their messages, he had paid over hundreds of dollars every single day to all of these girls. Can you imagine how much money that is? My husband came into the room and saw me on his phone. Of course, he didn't freak out because he never thought that I would find it. But I confronted him right away. But he didn't even flinch. He said he had every right to go on OnlyFans because it was the same thing as going to any website. I told him to at least unfollow my sister and he said that he wouldn't. He said he loved it because it was like watching me do naughty things. Then he said, "Isn't this better than cheating on you?" I was flabbergasted. Part 3 is up. My husband signed up for my sister's OnlyFriends. Should I divorce him? Disclaimers are not my story time. It's on Instagram. That's when he told me that it was better than him cheating on me. And I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I threatened him. I told him that if he didn't stop following my sister, that I would start my own OnlyFriends account. Like I said, he's really jealous. So he went berserk. He ripped my phone out of my hand and threw it against the wall. Then he told me that the only reason he asked me to quit my job was so that I wouldn't be around other men. By the way, I used to be a personal trainer, and most of the time I would only train women. I told him that my sister and I wouldn't be comfortable with him looking at our OnlyFriends. It was so disturbing. Oh, and I also told him that he needed to stop controlling me, and that I could buy my own phone with my own money and start my own account. Then he came to his senses and started to apologize. And I also told him that I was suspecting that he bugged my phone, and that he was receiving my messages, because there was no other way he could have found out about my sister's account. Then he calmed down and explained things to me. He said that he had bugged my phone a few months ago because I was posting too much on Instagram and it was bothering him. So basically, he has access to my DMs and all my text messages. Promised to stop doing that and that he would buy me a new phone. And that's how he found out about my sister's OnlyFriends. He said he only signed up out of curiosity, and that he only wanted to see a few pictures and then delete it. But the more he kept looking at her pictures, the more he would think of me, and that it turned him on. And in front of me, he deactivated his account and deleted everything. He promised me that he would never do that again. Of course, I haven't forgiven him though. Haven't even spoken to him in days. But every time he sees me, he tries to kiss me and hug me. And when I push him away, he tries even harder. Honestly, I think he likes it. I do believe that he's secretly addicted to drama and that he thrives on it. I'm planning on never telling my sister about it. I don't think she'd feel comfortable around him ever again. I mean, I don't feel comfortable around him right now. I'm so confused and I don't know if I should leave him or not. He's so controlling all the time. What should I do?